Good morning to the folks in other parts of the country. I'd like to say greetings. My name is Sequoia Simmermeyer. I'm the chairman of the National Indian Gaming Commission and from the Hovland Tribe. Before turning over our special event today to Vice Chair Hovland and to our honored guest, Chief Judge Blake, I just want to say a few words of appreciation to all of the team at the NIGC for the work and the emphasis opportunity we have to share our resources and to highlight a very, very important issue this month. The National Indian Gaming Commission at its core as a regulatory body is charged with protecting tribal assets derived from Indian gaming. An important part and tool in doing that and accomplishing that mission is supporting the regulatory capacity that exists in Indian country and encouraging preparedness across the regulatory community. These offer opportunities to address important issues as they're articulated by tribal lawmakers and to build on the resources and the effort that's being made across the Indian gaming industry and across the regulatory community to address important issues and to assess risk and to join with a shared emphasis in helping to address a very important topic, human trafficking. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Vice Chair Hovland, who's going to be leading today's special event, and briefly say a few words about the Vice Chair and the opportunity that the agency has had to have the Vice Chair's expertise and enthusiasm for helping to find solutions and to find ways the National Indian Gaming Commission can build on its existing efforts to address human trafficking in Indian country. The Vice Chair came to the Commission with a career marked in public service and federal policy in Indian country issues, and brings with her experiences from the Department of Health and Human Services. And with that, we are able to build on our shared effort from recent commissions to highlight resources that help to address this very important topic. So with that, I will turn the floor over to Vice Chair Hovland to introduce our special guest. And I want to say thank you to everyone for participating today and for the efforts that we're all making together to help address an important issue. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Simmermeyer, and thank you for your support and leadership on this important topic. Empathy washte, chante washte na pe chuzapi, Jeannie Hovland amachapi, isante oyate amatanshto. Good afternoon. I greet you all with a good heart. Again, I'm Jeannie Hovland, and I'm a proud member of the Flange Santee Sioux Tribe, and I'm also Vice Chair at the National Indian Gaming Commission. I want to thank you for joining us today for the NIGC Special Emphasis on Human Trafficking. I also want to acknowledge Second Lady Lizer of the Navajo Nation, who is one of the participants joining us today. I've had the honor to meet with the Second Lady as well as First Lady Nez over the last couple of years, and I admire how they've been such a passionate voice on the crisis of our missing and murdered relatives. If there are other tribal leaders joining us today, we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. In honor of January being designated as Human Trafficking Prevention and Awareness Month, the NIGC has used our social media platform to raise awareness on this issue. And in addition, today we have a guest speaker, Chief Judge Richard Blake, who I'll be introducing momentarily. But first, a few housekeeping items. I'll be moderating today's session, and if you wish to ask a question, you can do so in two ways. To ask your question live, use the raise hand button located at the lower right corner of your computer screen, and we will assist in activating your microphone. Or you can type your question in the question and answer box, also located at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to ask questions, and you'll have the opportunity to do so right after Judge Blake has shared his story. This virtual event is closed to the press, so if you're a member of the press, I need to ask that you disconnect now. Thank you. There are two types of human trafficking: labor trafficking and sex trafficking. Today, we'll be talking specifically about sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is when individuals are compelled to engage in commercial sex acts through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. However, when a person under the age of 18 is persuaded to perform a commercial sex act, it is a crime, regardless of whether there is any force, fraud, or coercion. The scale of this crime is shocking. It is estimated that 24.9 million people are currently trafficked, generating billions of dollars in illegal profits in a multi-billion-dollar industry that has grown to the third largest criminal enterprise globally. While victims may be of any gender, race, or socioeconomic background, age, traffickers typically target the most vulnerable members of society. The United States Trafficking in Persons Report identifies American Indians and Alaska Natives as particularly vulnerable. Native women still experience more physical and sexual violence than any other racial and ethnic groups. The effects of historical trauma continues to be deeply felt across Native American communities. Other factors, such as the complexity of jurisdictional law enforcement issues in Indian country, contribute to the disproportionate impact of human trafficking on Native American people. The Indian Gaming Regulatory Act and the NIGC regulations require tribes to operate gaming facilities in a manner that adequately protects public health and safety. In December, President Biden released the White House National Action Plan to combat human trafficking, which states that existing efforts led by the National Indian Gaming Commission, in conjunction with the Department of the Interior's Bureau of Indian Affairs, Treasury with the support of the Department of Homeland Security, will conduct outreach to tribal hospitality enterprises to raise awareness on the risks of human trafficking in the industry. The NIGC remains committed to working with tribal nations, tribal gaming stakeholders, anti-human trafficking organizations, and federal agencies to provide awareness and prevention efforts. Please visit our website at nigc.gov for more resources on this topic. Now, without further ado, it is my honor to introduce our guest speaker. Chief Judge Blake is a proud member of the Hoopa Valley Tribe located in California and serves as Chief Judge for the Redding Rancheria, Judge of the Tola Dene Nation Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court, and Appellate Justice for the Cow Creek Tribe. He is a current co-chair of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Judges Tribal State Forum. Judge Blake continues to work on a national level in the areas of child sex trafficking and domestic violence, and was recently appointed to the National Drug Endangered Children's Board of Directors. His full biography is available on the NIGC website under our events section. Judge Blake has bravely stepped forward to share his personal story about human trafficking with the intent to make certain that tribal communities are informed of the risks of youth and human trafficking. I want to disclose that this story is survivor informed and has adult content that may be disturbing for some to hear, but the message is the reality of this heinous crime. Participation discretion is advised. Judge Blake, thank you so much for joining us today. We are honored to have you.
Thank you, Jane. And it is truly an honor to be here today to speak with on this topic. And as I looked at the list of participants, I mean, certainly this is a topic that I am so blessed to be able to share. And I'm hopeful that the words that you had provided, it's not intended for shock value by any standard. I mean, and one of the things I want to say is that, following the incident that I'm going to talk about, it has been a work in progress continuously. And as you will see, as you had indicated, I am still passionate about the issue of trafficking because it is near and dear to my heart. And I will work with whatever agency needs some assistance in this area. So I'll just jump right into this because, again, my name is Richard Blake. I am a Hoopa tribal member. The Hoopa Valley Indian Reservation is located in Eastern Humboldt County in Northern California, very, very remote, but beautiful community. When I say remote, there are probably less than 3,000 people living in that community, all not native. Several non-natives reside. Several tribal communities surround the Hoopa Valley Indian Reservation. The Yurok tribe sits to the north of us, and the Karuk tribe sits to the east of us. And there are in Northern California several tribes that surround, including the Toloadeni Nation, which is in Smith River, California, that borders the state of California and Washington, right on the coast of California. My story is one that I want to start this story by telling you I am the former president of the National American Indian Court Judges Association, and by that became associated with the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, a organization that is dedicated to providing education for state, federal, and tribal judges across the nation. The NIGC organization also dedicated to providing training for not only judges, but for court personnel in Indian country. My story starts that there was a training that the National Council had reached out to me to participate in, and they said, please come. It's called sex trafficking. And the topic itself was, it was not one that garnered a lot of interest, but two, it was just one that I'm thinking, oh, but I'll go. So I went to the event, and I recalled that it was in Louisville, Kentucky. And I attended the event, and as it started, it was led by a now retired judge out of New Mexico, John Romero. John Romero did such a phenomenal job as the facilitator of this program. And little by little, the very first day as I sat in this, I kept thinking, this does not apply to me because I'm from Indian country. This doesn't happen to us in Indian country. It's just, and thinking about my small community and how, I think that we're pretty protected where we were at. And so I decided that I wasn't going to, I wasted my time is what I thought initially. But as the words started flowing out of Judge Romero's mouth and some of the presentation started to unfold, it was like, wow, okay, this is kind of interesting because it does show a lot of, there are a lot of things that could pertain to Indian country. But again, I was very, very skeptical because I do not believe that happened in my community. It just doesn't happen. So long story short, 3-day presentation, 3-day training. I completed the training and thanked the National Council for being able to participate and went on my merry way. And, as I say, working with youth and working with domestic violence victims, I thought, well, something that, I'll tuck away in the back of my mind and it may surface someday, who knows? So I left that presentation, went home. I, at that point, was living in Hoopa, and my little community. I mean, as I say, my little community, surrounded by, it's in a valley, surrounded by mountains, and one road in, one road out. So it's not like it's on a major highway. It's not by any standards. We're pretty protected from from commercial trafficking. In another sense, I mean, as far as trucking and all those things, there wasn't a lot of traffic going that way. As I said, I kept the literature from this training, and it got tucked away into one of my bookshelves. And quite honestly, I never opened it again. I never looked at it again. It didn't cross my mind to even look at it again. So my story is this. My wife and I married about 12 years ago. My wife, I have a now 20-year-old daughter. I have an 8-year-old daughter that's my biological child, but the 20-year-old had all these aspirations of doing things that she was going to be make us proud for. My child graduated high school at 16. That was one of her aspirations. She wanted to do that. She wanted to make her mark on the world. She had aspirations of doing so many things. She thought about probation. She thought about law enforcement. She thought about law school. She thought about all these things that she wanted to do. But at 16 years old, when she started to apply to these schools, one of the things that they were very consistently in saying is, when you get older. And, you know, so nothing more discouraging than hearing when you get older. So again, with the remote community of Hoopa, California, the main source of entertainment for our youth was social media, and social media being, you know, Facebook, all these different platforms. And interestingly enough, when I spoke on this subject in Mississippi Band and a group of youth talked with me, they informed me that the use of, when I talk about, if you play Candy Crush and you're on Facebook, you're old. And so I immediately deleted my Candy Crush so that I wouldn't be an old person. But I realized that there are so many different social platforms out there, none that I use. And I didn't recognize that those were readily available: Snapchat, Instagram, all these different types of programs. So I never had any reason to question what my child was looking at. It never crossed my mind that that was something I would have to look at. But midwinter, I came home from work, and my wife came home from work, and she asked me if I had seen our daughter. I was like, no. I said, she'll be home later. So we started texting her. Where are you? Get home. It's almost dinner time. And kept texting, no response. So my wife reached out to her friend, and she said, you know, have you heard from her? And she said, no. And she said, are you sure? Yes. She's not there? No. Okay. Well, we kind of, you know, just waited around thinking that she was with friends, maybe had gone into Eureka with friends and didn't tell us, and which was not uncommon. But we made the, you know, we weren't panicked at that point until the next day. The next day, she still didn't come home, still didn't contact us. We didn't know where she was at. So we started texting her feverishly. Where are you? Are you okay? Because at this point, when you're starting to think about things like that, all these crime shows come to your mind as like, oh no, did something happen? Did someone come here because we lived right on the highway? Did someone stop by and take her? What happened? And that one day quickly morphed into 117 days that we didn't hear from her. Daily, we wondered. Daily, we texted, where are you? What are you doing? With no answer. So it started to be one that it's not that I forgot about it. It's just that with the unanswered text messages and phone calls, I became numb to it. I wasn't quite certain what was happening. I had left my community, and I had gone on a training with the actually it was at the National Congress of American Indians. They had their event, and I went with our executive director, and it was in San Diego. So I went with her to this event, and we had finished the presentation, and we were walking back to our hotel, and this phone call came up on my phone, and I looked at it and I was like, I don't need my social security number or all these little scams, my student loans paid, whatever it is. I didn't need that, so I didn't answer. It called back again, and I'm thinking persistent, ignore. The third time that the number came through, I'm thinking, somebody's really trying to get a hold of me. And so I answered. The voice on the other end was my daughter. Her statement was, "I need help." The story that unfolded from that point forward, as she talked to me, was one that in the back part of my mind, I was hearing the voice of Judge John Romero as all these things, all these facts were unfolding to me. And I'm thinking to myself, absolutely no way possible that this could happen. No way. There's just no way. And I was very, I mean, as I listened, I'm thinking, and so the story, I mean, what had happened is she had informed me that she had gotten away. She was being held against her will. And she was in Los Angeles, and that she needed help. She had left the home of her trafficker. She was being trafficked by sliding out of a little window when she was being forced to shower. She left her trafficker's home in his boxer shorts, in his white beater, no shoes, and ran and hid. She could see them looking for her because she could see the car driving, and hid and used somebody's phone to call me. Reached out with her lifeline, if you will. Called me to tell me that she needed help. And my first thing, I kept asking her, where are you? Well, you know, I need to get to you. Where are you at? And she didn't really honestly know, but to tell me that she was at it's either a $2 or $5 movie theater, and that somebody had lent her the money to get in, and she was sitting in a movie theater and used some random woman's phone. So I told her, I said, give me 1 second, let me call somebody to get you some help. I reached out to a Los Angeles County Superior Court judge and said, you're my lifeline, I need help. Briefly told him the situation. He told me, give me 2 minutes and call me right back. I called him back and he said, we have LAPD en route. And he goes, we'll get her. LAPD responded. They took her, they took custody of her. And mind you, she's 17, but rapidly approaching 17 years old at this point, would turn 17 in 4 days. And they had her, and they called me and told me, we have your daughter. And a sigh of relief, one, that she was protected. She had, that she was one of the blessed that came home, and not one that we're getting that call that says, we have a body. So when we were trying to figure out how to get her home, in undergrad, I worked at United Airlines, and I had reached out to one of my coworkers, and I said, hey, I need some help. And my former coworker called, and he says, get her to LAX. We have a flight going back up to Eureka Arcata. We will put her on that flight. And I said, hang on, let me get my credit card information. He goes, absolutely not. He goes, this is on United Airlines. United Airlines will get her home for you. So the LAPD actually bought her clothing to wear on the plane back to Eureka Arcata. They took her to the airport and kept her safe until she walked onto the plane. And it was a nonstop back up to Eureka Arcata. And when she got to Eureka Arcata, my wife was there to meet her. And my wife called me and she said, you need to come home. And I did. I mean, I was planning already to come home. And so I made my way back. I made my way back home. And her story was, through social media, she met a person who told her she was a beautiful young girl, told her how she had the ability to do modeling, how she, she needed somebody who could market her in an industry that that very few could get into without the assistance of somebody like this person. Also told her that, there's big money in this. The money will be able to afford you, the ability to have a nice vehicle, to have everything a young woman would ever want. And that to a 16-year-old, that, I would imagine was very, very enticing to think, wow, think of the possibilities, especially somebody who had all these aspirations of proving herself at such a young age. She told me that she got into a vehicle. She got into a vehicle with somebody off of Craigslist that picked her up in front of our home and drove her to Los Angeles. Told her, they stopped halfway. She slept in a car with this individual that she did not know. She said they just slept in a rest area. Got her to Los Angeles, and certainly she said that initially it was all good. Bought her a lot of clothes, makeup, nails. They did everything. And there were photo shoots. The photo shoots initially were very, what she indicated were very professional photography and showing what she could do. Mind you, my child is 5 foot tall and is not the 5'10" or taller model that would the fashion designers are looking for. So again, the photographs that she was seeing certainly probably could have been nice, but nothing that would be marketable. Slowly, the photography changed to a little bit more risque clothing, and this is a different market. And if you've ever seen the Victoria's Secret models, this is how they started. They started with clothing, and then they had to morph into other things, and it changed into bikini tops and swimsuits, and then then it had to move into using Sports Illustrated as an example, then using Victoria's Secret as an example. Lingerie is where a lot of the models start. So morphing into that. She lived in what they called a model house. A model house was what she said was a 3-bedroom home that was pretty secure, and meaning that they didn't have the ability to get in or out without somebody, letting them in or out. It also, she said, there was bunk beds in every room, and when she says bunk beds, there was girls from places that she didn't even know, young girls. Some of them didn't even speak English. And as when she first arrived, she noticed that there was almost like a hot seat type situation where a girl would sleep in one bed and she'd be gone for a couple of days, and then somebody else would sleep in that bed. So that situation quickly turned into a constant rotation of people. Young ladies flowing through this house. She then told me that because of the anxiety of, being photographed in clothing that was not comfortable for her, she said they started to give her medication to help ease to start easing her tension and her anxiety. And she said at some points in her stay, she could not honestly tell you what the day was about. The situation quickly turned from modeling into other things. It turned into, we have a person that wants to take pictures of you. It's a photo shoot. Well, the photo shoots have never been fully explained to me, and one that I can only say that when they're called photo dates, it makes me understand a little bit more clearly what the intent was. The photo dates were typically with people who wanted to touch and paw and do everything else. And that was included in the fee for the price. When she told them that was not something that she was willing to do, it was at this point the script changed. Now it was, if you don't, we're going to notify your family and let them know what you're doing here. We know your dad's a judge. And what do you think people are going to say when they know that a judge's daughter is out here, and this is what she's doing? And she said, I was ashamed and I didn't know what to do. She told them, I want to leave. That was no longer an option. When she said that the control in and out of the house was strong, was closely monitored, simply leaving wasn't a choice. When she went places, they monitored her. Over the next 60 days, she indicated that modeling turned into things that she has never talked with me about, and something I probably never want her to talk with me about. My daughter told me that in addition to being driven places, that she was also went to a town that I know my daughter has never been to, but I have been, and that is Austin, Texas. And she told me about things in Austin, Texas that she could never have known about. One of them was there is a street in Austin where nightlife is very, very active. And you're able to be driven around these by bicycles with loud music and lights. And it's true. I've been there. It is true that is there. The actual fact that made me realize that she was there was she talked about a bridge, and that she was taken there in the company of what she called an old man, and that they watched bats fly out from underneath the bridge, which is one of the events that happen in Austin, Texas, every evening when the bats leave to fly out. She told me about that, and told me that she was allowed to get on an airplane to fly to Austin from Los Angeles, and allowed to get on an airplane and fly back to Los Angeles. I often wanted to ask more, but was told, don't. Let her tell her story to you as she wants to tell you. I didn't. I never prodded. I figured when she's ready, she'll tell me that everything that she's prepared. My daughter was my road warrior. If I had a trip, and she would hop in and ride along with me, and it was enjoyed company. And after she came back, those opportunities didn't exist as often, but when they did, it gave her the perfect opportunity to tell me about things that I as I bit the inside of my mouth, and the anger and all the sympathy for her cannot be, I could not express other than to say, that's unfortunate. I'm very, very sorry. There's so many bad people in this world that take advantage of others. Well, we brought our daughter home. She had been tattooed. Her middle finger had been tattooed for identification, meaning that if they were to look for her and she was to alter her appearance in any other way, they certainly would be able to tell by the tattooing of the finger. We tried to get it removed. She tried to remove it herself with salt. Everyone told her to rub salt into it. It was a big, horrible scab, but it came back. We tried to get it removed. We tried to cover it up. It bled back through. We don't know what they used to tattoo her, but it kept coming back. As a result, once she returned home, my daughter went into hiding. I will say she went into hiding. The most devastating portion of this is that I was at work and I got a text message from her, and she says, "If you get an email from me, please don't read it." And I said, "What?" And she said, if you get an email from me, please don't read it." And I said, "What is it?" And she goes, "Just promise me you're not going to open it." And I said, "No, you tell me what it is." And she said, "It's from them." And I said, "Oh." And that night we talked, and we didn't realize is that she had an iPad and she had a cellular phone, and they had access to all her social media contacts. What they did was they sent out video of her to all the people in her contacts, which included members of my community. And so it was, instead of looking at it as a victim of a very horrendous crime, it was looking at, oh, she looks like she's a willing participant, and understanding that under the age of 18, there is no consent. You cannot consent to that. That started some dialogue in my community that, it was giggles and grins and everyone pointing a finger, and she again put her even deeper into depression. And the saving grace is she asked me never to open it. I didn't. I deleted it. I deleted it because, one, I don't think that it's something I needed to see, and two, I am not going to feed into this blackmail that these individuals were forcing on her, and nor should anybody else, feed into that. But that is a way that they get control. You come back, we'll delete it all. We know where you are. We know, we'll put this out on your dad, and that's one of the things that she was mostly afraid of, is that it was going to impact me. Well, I didn't worry about it impacting me because, one, I looked back at the training that I received from the National Council. I looked back at, the words that were coming out of Judge Romero's mouth about how these children are groomed, how they're groomed into this. It was such a textbook example of how trafficking begins. You're beautiful. Social media, somebody who's alone. Her social life basically had been cut off because she had graduated high school. She had she couldn't go to the dances. She didn't no longer fit into that group. So in trying to find a way to move on, she found a different route. Unfortunately, it wasn't the route that was positive. We as she hid herself, and we allowed her the space to do so. We tried to encourage her to get into therapy. Coming from a small community, one would wonder, would think that the community would embrace a victim of something like this, but that's not the case. That's not what happened. I mean, and I recognize that very quickly, and so receiving help for her, therapy-wise, we had to result to taking her outside the community so that she would be ensured confidentiality, and that that she would have the ability to talk with somebody who didn't have any input from the community. So I'm one of the things that we did is there are survivors of trafficking that, as I spoke about this across the country and connecting her with other survivors who gave her a lot of strength in doing things, gave her strength to where she started to apply for jobs. But when you're applying for jobs and you're competing against other people, and and you're selected for a job, the comments then come out, I guess you have to be a porn star to get a job here. Or working in another entity that one of the supervisors just said, well, you heard about her past, right? I mean, is she really a good fit here? And when I heard about that, I went back to that person and I told them, I said, I'm not here as her dad. I'm here as a member of this community, and I'm as a member, as a supporter of survivors. That was inappropriate. She was a child, and shame on you for even doing that. So we, as we continued, I started to realize that the myth surrounding trafficking, they're not true. They're not all true. You don't have to come from a broken home to be a victim of trafficking. You don't have to be impoverished to be a victim of trafficking. You don't have to come from a certain ethnic background to be a victim of trafficking. You don't have to, your parents aren't always criminals to be a victim of trafficking. All these myths, all these things that you see out there about how people are in foster care, and that's, and certainly that is true. That is true, but that's not always the case. There are youth out there in our systems, and I say youth because it is both male and female, as we are now finding out that the victims are not, it's not strictly female, although a higher percentage of them are. And, but what I also realized is that this, my own myth that it can't happen in my community. What an eye opener. It did happen in my community. I was as I sit back and watch this, I keep thinking to myself, my God, what was I thinking that it couldn't happen in my community? It was happening under my own roof. It happened under my own roof and I didn't see it. It happened to somebody that I would die for in my own house. So, I have to say, I wanted to put those myths out there because she by no means was abused, neglected, and I will tell you, probably pretty spoiled, to be honest with you. But the most important thing is that she was determined. She was determined to make something of herself. And how many other of our youth are out there, or they call it survival, they call it all those things. And at some point, I have to say that listening to the things that she told me, it was survival. It was survival, and it started to be, she wondered if she would ever get away. The one opportunity she had to get away, to slip out a window that typically the normal person could not fit out, she used, and she did flee. She got away, and she wasn't located by them and taken back. So, one of the things I always, thank Creator for is that she was returned home to us. I'm one of those parents of a surviving trafficking victim that is able to say, thank you to the Creator for allowing her to come home. Thank you to the Creator for giving her the strength to heal. We when I talked about communities, one of the things that happen in small communities is there's always that, oh, we knew it was going to go that way. We knew that this was going to happen. Oh, the writing was on the wall. I will tell you, I don't think that any victim of trafficking ever thinks that is going to be my destiny. That is what I want to do in life, especially children. And I point out children because their minds, as we all know, are very, very still not developed to the point that decisions like that are ones that they can make. Tribal communities sometimes can shun those that without explanation, and I think that the education on this type of event is critical, because it is not a choice. It's not a choice. It is a unfortunate circumstance that affect our, our children across this nation, native or non-native, and from other countries. Children being brought into this country and forced into a life that as I say, it pains my heart to even hear about this. As a result of all this, I started to reach out to so many different agencies, National Council. I have done a lot of training with them. I reached out to Jeannie before. I actually was able to speak at the White House on this, the reauthorization of the trafficking bill. I have also worked with UPS. One of my beliefs is, in some of these remote communities, who sees the insides of these houses? Delivery drivers. Everybody is glad to see the delivery drivers with the items that you ordered and open those doors willingly, and training them on what to look for. And at the White House, one of the executives from UPS had reached out to me. She says it gave me chills, because we never thought about that, and helping to develop a protocol for their delivery drivers to identify potential traffic victims has been initiated. In addition, the director of our tribal casino that I work for, the Redding Rancheria, they sent their director of the hotel to a training and on trafficking, so that they would be able to go back and train their staff on some identifiers for trafficking and how to deal with that. I think it's taking that type of initiative to train not only your gaming your casino employees, but your casino hotel employees, your administration, all these people that have day-to-day contact with people. Airlines, cruise lines, hotels, railroads, all are jumping on the bandwagon and informing their staff on the signs of potential risk, signs of trafficking. And it's taking, when we're talking about trafficking, there have been, you read about how there are people being arrested, and that there's 10 or 12, 15 people involved in this ring of trafficking people that traffic these youth, and how they're brought down. And but I think one of the interesting things about that is that tribal communities are consistently included in these tribal communities, because of lack of law enforcement, because they're remote, because of that maybe consistently somebody does walk away for a few days and they're not missed for a few days, or maybe they do leave for 6 months. And we get into the missing, murdered Indigenous women issue, and how many of them possibly could have been a victim of trafficking gone bad, because of their because they no longer wanted to be a part of that. And Creator, all I can do is pray that Creator is going to bless the waiting families, is like He did me, and at some point return them home. And when they return home, to embrace, because one, you have them there, heart beating, and alive, and and working with them on trying to live through the agony of somebody else. Trafficking is not only affects the actual victim, but it affects us as a community. It affects us as parents, as judges, as administrative folks. I'm not quite certain of the discipline in this of this group, But what I am saying is that, the potential for any one of us to have a family member fall victim to this is there. I wish I could say that I'm one of those people that wasn't a target. I am. And the reason that I own this now is because I think it's important to get that message out to people that this is real. This is one thing that, the first few times that I did this presentation, it was one of the hardest things. I got the biggest lumps in my throat and so many times, because it is the hardest thing to tell people that your child was this victim. And the one thing I want to do is I want to empower her. I want one day for, instead of it being me doing this, that it's her sitting right here beside me, and that we are telling the story together, not as a dog and pony show, but as a survivor and the parent of a survivor, and showing that it is possible. It is possible. I want to be mindful of time, but I wanted to say that I want to kind of give an update. My daughter's doing very well, doing very, very well. We had our valleys and peaks. I will give that. We had those, and she has. I could not be more proud of her for the accomplishments that she has made. She did get a job with the federal government, and I applaud her for that, because I think that the obstacles that she hurdled in the other public sector was not successful, because somebody in a community always knew it had happened and made comment, and it created so much stress and trauma for her that she would, instead of addressing it head on, she would walk away with her tail between her legs. And it took empowering her to tell her, you did nothing wrong. You are a child. You did nothing wrong. And I stand 100% behind that. And in fact, I mean, one of the things that I made certain that we did was, in our juvenile codes in the courts that I worked in, is making certain that we remove the word prostitution from our codes, because prostitution means that that you're able to consent. These are children, folks. They're not able to consent. They're victims. They're victims of some very sick and disgusting people who prey on those who cannot make choices for themselves. But in my current capacity, my ability to spread the word to whoever will listen, and hopefully this word goes beyond, not in a negative way, not to oh, poor Judge Blake. It is one that it's a lesson learned, and one that the lesson learned has a positive outcome, as I said so many times, as we have her home. And I am hopeful that, if you have any questions, reach out to Jean, reach out to myself. I would be happy to speak further on this. Typically the presentation's a lot longer, but we're on limited time today. So I do want to close it off there. And I want to say, Jane, thank you very, very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to this on this subject. Again, near and dear to my heart. If the opportunity ever presents itself again, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask. I am very, very honored to do this and to continue to spread this word and educate those in tribal and non-tribal communities on the issues of sex trafficking of our minors.
Chante Pidami, thank you from our heart for sharing. Tell your daughter thank you for allowing you to share this story, and that she's amazing. And this, I believe, is going to continue to impact in a positive way families and survivors and communities. On how, one of the questions I want to ask you, and we do want to move to question and answer also, is how, Judge Blake, sometimes people don't know what to say to survivors, whether it's domestic violence, human trafficking, what have you. And so then they alienate themselves. I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I don't say anything. And these survivors are left by themselves and alone. And in this case, there was not only that, but there was victim shaming. And that obviously needs to start in the home, teaching, leading by example in our homes and in our communities. Obviously, those are conversations that we need to have, but how from survivor, that's why it's so important that these are survivor informed, and we're so grateful you're here. How do we support survivors and their families?
So one, I mean, the very first thing is when she came home, we made certain that we understood, that she recognized she was a victim. She's a child, she's a victim. And my wife said, now, when she got off the plane, she looked defeated. And that's not my child. So, you know, I mean, embrace, like I said, you know, my continued thanks to the Creator for bringing her home, but embracing and listening, because, you know, to drag the story out of her would have been more devastating and more damaging than anything, but letting her listen. And, you know, one of the things when she was telling me, well, people saw that, you know, people are talking about it, and, you know, it was a big, you know, it went through the community like crazy. And it was, you know, I worry about the impact that it has on the self-esteem of a young girl. And I used to always tell her, you know, she told me, she goes, I would have, you know, maybe it would have been better if I had just never come back. And, you know, that in itself told me how impactful this was on her. But a lot of embrace and a lot of participation and just a lot of listening. Like I said, those road trips were the ability for me to be a sounding board and biting my tongue quite frequently to what I heard. And, you know, some of the things she says, I'll tell you something, but don't ever say anything. I was like, all right, you know, we'll do that. We'll do that. But, you know, if it means that you're going to harm yourself, it means all these other things, I can't promise you that. I won't promise you that. It never was that. It's just the idea of wanting to be heard and wanting to be continually reassured that I didn't think ill of her. We didn't think ill of her. My wife and myself didn't think ill of her. And we now, I guess part of this is you have a victim who also comes home and needs therapy. But let me tell you, there's a lot of anxiety with a parent or a family or a community, if you will, that of a child that comes home into that environment and trying to prepare yourself for dealing with that. It's been a work in progress since this has happened, and my family, my entire extended family is aware that this has happened and have embraced her as well. My 93-year-old dad, who died in March, he told me, he said, I mean, you know, 93 years old, had very few kind things to say about people who did something like this. And his solution obviously was to, you know, garner a gaggle of people up and go down and take care of this ourselves. But, you know, that's the old mentality. But I mean, I think that it gave my daughter some peace of mind that he told her that, you know, that, you know, people like that need to be handled appropriately. And unfortunately, you know, that isn't the right way, but, you know, it certainly gave her a peace of mind that that's the way it should have been.
I'm grateful she has a loving and supportive family.
So I did a presentation to an organization in Mississippi called One Loud Voice, and it's all youth. And this happened right at the beginning of the pandemic, and they delayed for a year. And one of the most positive was it was youth led, and it gave us the ability to speak to the youth about, you know, the risks associated with social media and trusting those, and you know, and outcomes, and certainly it is something I think needs to be said. It needs to happen. And with youth, I think that everybody probably knows somebody who may know somebody who has fallen victim to this. So it's always a topic that youth are interested in, and certainly it's something that I would be willing to do.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll help make connections afterwards. Be sure to follow up. Have there been any situations where there was a trigger for your daughter? How was it handled? I'm glad she's doing okay. That's coming from Beverly Carter.
Yes. So let me tell you what triggers is. I had the opportunity to take my daughter on one of my travels, and we were on a plane, and she saw a gentleman with a much younger girl, and I told her, I said, well, that could be his daughter, and she said no, and she said, it just panicked her, and she goes, you do not know the number of times that I tried to make eye contact with people on the airplane to try to get help. And I said, is that the case? And she goes, I can't say it is, but so those types of things, flying on an airplane is a trigger. So the only other thing is she has no social media to this day, has no social media at all. And the issue of social media, I mean, the victimization by people reaching out and sending her anonymous emails and stuff like that, that will be a big setback, and we'll know when it's happened, because how's the porn star, and things like this. And those are triggers for her, because you don't, I guess you don't, those aren't as easy to drop as I would envisioned.
Thank you. I'm just so sorry that's happening. And then conversations again that need to be talked about with youth and families and communities. We have Second Lady Lizer asked a question: as leaders in our communities, what is the first thing we can do to bring awareness?
Yeah, one of the interesting things is tribal governments. I mean, governments in general need to educate themselves on the potential risks associated with trafficking. I mean, looking at especially in some of these smaller communities. As I was doing a presentation, this lady was telling me that she lived close to the pipelines, and that there was a lot of trafficking going on with the in that industry where there is a need there. I mean, the demand there, the supply is brought there, and she talked about that, and that the number of what were perceived as Native youth being presented for that was astounding to her. And so I think that if we're losing any of our youth and they just don't turn back up, we as a tribal government need to find out where they are. What happens to where are these youth at? And again, I use youth because it's male and female. I do know of one that came back that was a male and left because his sexual orientation changed based on his survival, and that was highly shunned, and he left the community based on that.
Again, so much we need to learn, and you addressed Tanya Dewey's question. You reached out a little bit with what you just said on how can we teach our Native communities victim sensitivity to our missing and murdered Indigenous women, domestic violence, and human traffic victims. Really breaking down that stigma is something that's just so important. Not only breaking down the stigma, but not re-victimizing, the intentional.
Well, I think part of I was one of the worst violators of believing that it didn't happen in our community. And I'm just saying, talk about eating crow, is that you have to recognize that even in this small community that I thought would never happen to, that I figured was pretty safe, it happened. And It's so, keeping our eyes open for any small community and or any large community, or and making certain that we are protecting something that we can keep in our hearts as one of our best and most precious resources is our youth.
Agree. And
No, I just wanted to say, Jean, thanks to you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this. And, again, to anybody that is participating, my email, judge.blake@gmail, please feel free to reach out. The idea of speaking to high school age youth, yeah, I think it's important. But one of the things I think sometimes our own governments need to hear about this, and participation in, like I say, I thought it was a waste of my time. I really did think it was a waste of my time as I've sat in that presentation and regretted going. And to this day, I'm ever thankful. And I always reach out. John Romero is my brother for life, based on his words. He has been a major supporter of this, as well as several judicial officers throughout the country who have trafficking calendars. And so as we, this is getting to be a bigger thing for us nationally and internationally. And I think that we saw a little ways to go, and I'm so happy that the current administration is really pushing the trafficking issue forward.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Again, this conversation, I can't emphasize, is one that needs to happen regularly in our homes, in our communities. And thank you so much for speaking with us about your family's journey. We admire your strength, your courage to speak out so that other survivors and families and communities can work together on our prevention, on our intervention, and on our support in healing. We do not want to forget about that the story doesn't end with coming home, and thankfully for those that are able to come home, like you said, it's a blessing, but it doesn't end there. There's a journey of healing, and we need to remember that and learn how we can support survivors and their families. Today's topics were difficult, but so important to hear. And if you or some of you know may be in danger of human trafficking, please contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is a 24/7 confidential hotline for victims, survivors, and witnesses of human trafficking. The hotline has several ways you can reach them, and you can see it's displayed on the screen: by phone, by text, online chat, by email. We discussed some heavy topics today, which may be a trigger for some. And if you feel you may want to talk to someone, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's national helpline is available. It is also a free and confidential service provided 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And you can reach them at 1-800-662-HELP or 4357. This concludes today's special emphasis event. Thank you all for joining us and helping us to honor January as Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Pidamaye.
Thank you.
Thank you.